So one of the biggest myths in the crypto space is that if a token is not a security, then it's unregulated and the issuer is good to go. Misconception probably stems from the US approach to regulation, which focuses on the classification of a token as a security. In the UK, you need to look at other issues as well. So being a security is one issue, is clearly you need to be regulated, but it could also be a derivative or another form of financial instrument. That needs to be assessed. There are also other regimes other than the financial services regime that may apply. So for example, the e-money regime. Your token could be considered to be electronic money. For example, if it is one-to-one backed by cash and there is a claim on the issuer. And lastly, there's the anti-money laundering regime, which would apply if your token would be considered to be a crypto asset. So there are a number of regimes that you need to look at before you can say you're good to go. But lastly, there's one other thing that is quite important, is that the regime applying to crypto assets is varying. There are a lot of developments, and so the goalposts are moving.
It is also worth noting that crypto assets or tokens are not regulated in themselves. What is regulated is typically the activity that is performed in respect of the crypto asset or token. And so it is necessary to consider what specifically is being provided around the token to be able to determine whether you're regulated. In the UK, the buying and selling, the exchanging of tokens for other tokens or for cash will fall within regulation, as well as other ancillary activities like acting as a crypto asset wallet provider and acting as an intermediating entity, somebody who makes arrangements to exchange tokens. And so coming back to the initial question, it is not enough to just confirm that a token is not a security, sadly. One must consider the entire spectrum of activities being provided around the token and must characterize it correctly in the relevant regulatory framework to be able to determine whether you're good to go or not. Sadly, no. Registration or licensing requirement is potentially separate to the licensing requirements, the licenses that you as a broker-dealer or as a bank already hold. And therefore, at least in the UK, it would be necessary to obtain a separate license. Other jurisdictions may have different rules around this. More importantly, what is necessary is to consider the position in the location where the services are being provided, and that's not necessarily the location from which you're operating. And so if you've got clients all over the world, it is necessary to consider whether licensing requirements or registration requirements would be triggered at the location of your clients. Now, it is true that banks and broker-dealers have already certain practices in place.
So banks and broker-dealers and other regulated firms are very accustomed to operating within a licensed or regulated environment. And they have established risk frameworks in order to ensure that their operations stay within or outside of the regulatory perimeter. We've seen that startups and unregulated entities are less familiar with the regulated space. And so they need to create these risk frameworks and parameters of operation, so licensing requirements are no longer triggered. So this is a very common question that we get asked by clients. My competitor is doing this, why can't I? And the answer is very simple. The competitor might be doing something different and doing it differently. So what they're doing and how they're doing it may be different, and therefore the regulations apply differently. So being more specific, your competitor may be only dealing with institutional clients and you want to deal with retail. There will be a different application of the rules for that different service provision.
It is also worth noting that the regulatory frameworks are in constant flux. So the UK is developing its framework, the EU is developing a framework, but other jurisdictions are doing so as well. And as the crypto space has developed, what was unregulated or without any regulatory guidance 2 years ago may actually now be slightly different in the sense that regulators may have issued guidance and the position may have shifted. And so it is entirely possible that a competitor is acting on outdated legal advice or are just based in a location that wouldn't require them to hold a regulatory license.